My last video on shonen filler movies broadly examined the tropes, the story structure, and the production of those projects. This video is the exact opposite, a hyper-specific and personal critique of my favorite anime, Hunter x Hunter, as I believe it to be a perfect case study for everything I talked about in that video. One of these movies, Phantom Rouge, is fine. I wouldn't call it a favorite, but I at least felt like its multiple plot threads came together to tell a competent story. It has concepts I like, and it recycles certain developments from the main story well. The second film, The Last Mission, however, is not good. Aspects of its narrative conflict with each other, the unique ideas it introduces are unappealing, and it fundamentally misunderstands the series at its core. Phantom Rouge might be a more derivative work that relies heavily on cameos, but being original doesn't always equate to being enjoyable. It wouldn't be a proper MathWiz return if I didn't talk about Hunter x Hunter at some point, and I've had a Last Mission rant rattling around my brain for years now, so let's go. Hunter x Hunter Phantom Rouge was released on January 12, 2013, just after Gon and Killua entered Greed Island for the first time in episode 61 of the TV series. The film coincided with the release of Kurapika's Memories, a two-part manga special created by Yoshihiro Togashi that centered on Kurapika's childhood leading up to the massacre of the Kurta clan. Most notably, Kurapika's Memories introduced the Avengers' childhood friend Pyro, a visually impaired boy with a keen mind and a heart for adventure. Togashi stated in a 2013 interview that the backstory was first conceptualized during the serialization of the York New City arc, with the goal of portraying the Phantom Troop conflict from its origins. Health issues and other factors caused him to shelve the idea, but Phantom Rouge gave him a chance to revisit it. During the film, an abbreviated version of Kurapika's Memories is recounted as a flashback, after Kurapika's eyes are stolen by a seemingly resurrected Pyro. I like that the film uses this material to frame its secondary conflict for Leorio and Kurapika, but unfortunately, that's the entire setup for this plotline. The two get a brief scene with Hisoka, and then they don't show up again for another 40 minutes, right on cue for the final battle. You'd think Kurapika could have been the film's main character, with the backstory serving as a base for the plot to build on, but no, it was mainly for promotion. As is, it feels like the story's momentum stops to accommodate the flashback. Kurapika's screen time pales in comparison to Gon and Killua's, and while he does still add thematic depth to the narrative, his struggle doesn't resonate on the same level as theirs. The film opens on a stormy night in York New City. Killua coldly executes a typical Zoldyck family mission, and his older brother Illumi appears to establish himself as one of Phantom Rouge's key antagonists. He kills a random group of kids as a reminder to Killua that the perfect assassin doesn't need friends. And to ensure that his little brother's twisted fate becomes reality, Illumi vows that he'll always be watching. This scene hits all the beats it needs to with little wasted motion. It introduces characters in conflict from the main series in a way that's easy for potential newcomers to digest, but it does so in a unique context that piques my interest as an existing fan. Plot recycling is something that all shonen filler movies do to some extent, and even the canon ones still follow certain conventions codified by the latter. What matters is how those conventions are used and why they are used. Phantom Rouge's primary narrative is a distillation of Killua's character arc from the main series. It juxtaposes Killua's conflict with Illumi against an antagonist who wields puppets to highlight how Killua is his own person and not just a tool to be controlled by his oppressive family. The film's other original character, Retz, reflects this struggle as a puppet whose autonomy was stolen by her older brother. She herself carries around a true puppet, one that Gon claims feels alive. This motif even recycles dead imposter versions of characters from the main series in interesting ways, like when Nobunaga briefly fights a puppet Uvo. Kurapika's encounter with the imitation of his childhood friend also reflects Illumi's insistence that friends will only betray or be betrayed. The antagonist of the film, Omokage, is a former member of the Phantom Troop with ties to the Kurta clan massacre, and this foundation works well to connect both of the film's main plot threads. First, you have Kurapika's spider trauma and the motif of eyes being a window to the soul. The Kurta were feared for their scarlet eyes, and Omokage steals people's eyes for his own benefit. He then uses his ability to manipulate the dead against their will. Through Pyro, Omokage exploits the bond that inspired a young Kurapika to explore the world. Through Retz, he weaponizes his own eyes to ignore his sister's desires and make her immortal. In both cases, their eyes are symbols of their wills being erased. Puppet Pyro's perfect vision does not recreate his kind heart, and Retz lost her life for a hollow imitation of one. What connects this thread to the theme of betrayal, then, is Omokage's third puppet, Illumi. Not only did Omokage leave the Phantom Troop and force the shadows of its members to fight against the spider, but he also uses Illumi to sever the bond between Gon and Killua. These two themes are then countered by Gon's willingness to sacrifice his eyes to protect Killua. Leorio uses his own experience with a childhood friend dying to help Kurapika overcome his grief. These friendships triumph over the selfish Omokage, whose severed bonds ultimately come back to stab him. Retz chooses to burn alongside her abusive brother, rebuking his desires and reaffirming her own soul despite her missing eyes. Oh, and Hisoka gets to fight Puppet Crollo, 'cause, you know, he only joined the spider to eventually destroy it. Fun fact, there's a little reference to the Kingdom of Kakin in the end credits as Kurapika boards his flight. Togashi had ended his longest Hunter x Hunter publication streak in 2012 while the new anime was ongoing, a stretch of 30 chapters that concluded the Chimera Ant arc as well as the entire Chairman election arc. The last of these, chapter 340, began the Dark Continent expedition arc, presumably as a gesture to readers that the manga wouldn't be ending, it would just be on hiatus for a while. I know you want to make the hiatus joke, but I can only imagine how much pain Togashi must have pushed himself through to get all that done in the time frame he did. I hope he's doing okay. I might prefer the way canon Hunter x Hunter handles its narrative progression, but I can at least say that Phantom Rouge tells a competent story with cohesive theming. That said, the story is pretty disjointed. Sure, there are ideas here that I can break down in a video essay, but when I watch the movie, I just see an endless series of, this is happening now. Killua's conflict with Illumi and his friendship with Gon need to be introduced. This is happening now. Kurapika and Pyro need to be introduced. This is happening now. Retz and Omokage need to be introduced. The Phantom Troop needs to be introduced. Hisoka needs to be introduced. Fashion scene, impeccable character animation for a non-character. This is happening now. I'd say it all works if I don't think about it, but I have to think about it for it to work. If I turn my brain off, the movie is boring. Half of the dialogue is pure exposition. Where's the hype? Where's the aura? Then, when I think about the story, I start to question details like, why is Retz gender? Why does Illumi have cleavage? Why is there a suicide scene? No, seriously, who pushed for there to be a suicide scene? I hope they're doing okay. I don't like how Gon and Killua are constantly bickering with each other, though your mileage may vary. The antagonist has like 3 lines of dialogue in the first 2/3 of the movie. The combat isn't tactical at all, they just lose until they win. Above all that, though, I think Pyro is where this film missed the most. He just isn't a realized character. There's no bridge between the real Pyro and Puppet Pyro, which is a huge problem when Puppet Pyro is an important antagonist. How did he get revived? How does he feel about being revived? Does he even want to be fighting Kurapika? Am I doing okay? There's a brief moment near the end where he mentions having memories of his past life, and that's a cool potential conflict for these old friends to reconcile with. There's just nothing to establish a connection between Pyro, Omokage, and Kurapika beyond their Scarlet backstory. Hunter x Hunter Phantom Rouge is a mid-tier shonen movie. It's not interesting enough for me to recommend it as essential or fun viewing. It's just fine. I'd rather be watching the anime itself for the 22nd time. Instead, I've now watched this movie like 4 times because it's taken me far too long to write this script. I'm so good at this. And now I'm watching the last mission for like the 5th or 6th time because I took too long to write this script. Oh god, why do I do this to myself? Why did I willingly develop shonen movie brain rot? Am I doing okay? No. This video is brought to you by me, MathWiz. Hi. I have a Patreon that I'm really bad at promoting, and I'm trying to be better about that. I hypothetically stream on Twitch. I will get back to it, I promise. But if you don't follow me there, go ahead and check that out. I'm gonna go back to putting the patron credits in the videos, so, you know, if you give me $1 on Patreon, I'll put you in the credits of the video. Yeah, you can, yeah. I think that's it. Back to the video. Very random video here, but I have been obsessed with the new Call of the Night Season 2 opening, Mirage by Creepy Nuts. There is so much information conveyed in just a little, like, maybe 10-20 second snippet. She catches a bullet in her fucking teeth that's metal as hell. There's this one shot, which, I mean, yeah, I don't know what it represents, but I too like women. Is it very subtle? No. But is it cool? And is it vibes? Yes. Hunter x Hunter: The Last Mission was released on December 27th, 2013, just before the start of the Royal Palace invasion in episode 111 of the TV series. The film opens on a young Netero laying waste to a group of dudes led by a man named Jed. It then jumps to present day as the remnants of that same group, known as Shadow, break into a prison and free its captives for the sake of revenge. A dark power designed to counter Nen, known as On, gets teased as well, and so the last mission quickly introduces its core ideas: the destructive power of grudges, and political corruption within a large institution. This also frames the main conflict around Netero, rather than one of the main 4 characters, so there's potential to do something unique here. I can't wait to see Netero play an active role in this film. Yeah, despite being the target of the main antagonist's hatred, Netero does very little to influence the narrative. His Nen immediately gets sealed once the fighting breaks out, and this forces him to the sidelines until the climax, where he then participates in a lackluster final battle. On a mechanical level, I've seen enough shonen movies to recognize why this is the case. If Netero wasn't restrained, he'd be too powerful. He'd simply crush the threat himself, and then there wouldn't be a conflict for the rest of the cast. On a narrative level, though, there's no struggle he has to overcome, no meaningful challenge to his ideals. And in the bigger picture, it forces a morally gray plotline back into a black and white box. Chapter black, to be exact. Wait, sorry, I meant the black record. Must have been a typo in the script. Netero and Jed parallel each other in key ways. Nen and On are balancers, abilities meant to give power to the powerless. The Hunter Association, and by extension its chairman Netero, fosters Nen and his disciples through the grueling Hunter exam. Jed, similarly, passes down On to those who seek his guidance. They are 2 sides of the same coin, only one is arbitrarily painted as bad while the other is not. The original group Netero killed had grown too violent, and while the fact remains that said group had been created within the Hunter Association, and that Netero's actions had the ulterior motive of burying the association's crimes, removing them from the picture was a net positive, so we're told. That said, the ensuing aftermath involved the association oppressing innocent people, most notably the film's 3 supporting antagonists. The labor camp from the start of the movie had been legally enforced by hunters as well, so Jed's group merely leveled the playing field.
Own is the revenge that belongs to the weak and the oppressed.
This is why they seek revenge through exposing the dark secrets of the association and killing hunters. It's not unprovoked violence, it's retaliation. To them, Netero is the villain, and that opens the door for some moral ambiguity. Unfortunately, the film then slams that door shut. It goes out of its way to absolve the protagonists of any implicit connection to the tragedies that motivate the antagonists. And as a result, the themes that drive the narrative are completely toothless. I guess Pariston was actually the man behind the extermination. But, there's just one small problem with that. He isn't a featured character in the film! He's little more than a cameo with no speaking lines, so all of his misconduct falls under the general umbrella of the Hunter Association. As the chairman of that organization, as well as an active presence in the story, Netero naturally takes the blame. Yet Pariston and some random dude named Garcia exist to shift the responsibility off of him. Netero can play the hero, while Pariston vibes and Garcia dies. Who's Garcia, you ask? You know, Garcia, that one guy who appeared for a collective minute or two before he no longer mattered. He's got like a face, and he gives orders. You know, personally, I think it's your fault that you could just forget such important information. Not me, though. I'm too cute and smart to forget. Sorry, what was I talking about? Good to see you, Garcia. I've probably said your name more times than the film you're a part of did. As for Gon and Killua, they're at Heaven's Arena to see their friend, Zushi, fight in the Battle Olympia. You know, a concept that the arena staff tried to hype up in canon only for Gon and Killua to completely ignore it. She's like animated in the 99 version. I hope she's doing okay. The other concept mentioned in that scene, Floor Masters, has since been used in the manga as pretense for the fight between Hisoka and Crollo, but the Battle Olympia remains untouched. So why not use it for a filler movie? It's an effective set piece for bringing a bunch of random characters together, and that then presents a boatload of opportunities for fan service. Hell, even if it's just there to be window dressing for an unrelated conflict, it at least shows consideration for the source material. On that note, I normally don't care about whether or not these movies could fit into the main series timeline, as I don't think that's an actual judgment of quality, but The Last Mission gets me every time with how they stop to call attention to it.
Long time since we've been in the city. I know, we were in the jungle for such a long time.
Like, I just picture the Chimera Ant cast getting everything together for this big fight, and then at the last minute, Gon and Killua get a call and they're like, yeah, we can fit this in under the wire. Kite can wait, Pito can wait. You know who's more important right now? Zushi. Kurapika, Leorio, and Hisoka all return for this film as well, though I found myself disappointed by the roles they play. Hisoka's characterization boils down to guy who... Thanks, birds. Hisoka's characterization boils down to guy who speaks in playing card symbolism. And while that's kind of hilarious, it doesn't make him much of a character. The birds are just gonna keep chirping. I don't even know if it'll come through, but I'm good at that. In Phantom Rouge, he at least had some connection to the main antagonist. Omokage was the fourth member of the Spider that Hisoka replaced, and their mutual betrayal of the group could be thematically tied to Killua's character arc. In short, Hisoka's appearance went beyond mere fan service. It made sense for him to be in the film's final fight, and even if his role in that was relatively weak, at least he got a fight. In The Last Mission, his presence adds nothing aside from dragging Leorio into the action. He mostly just stands around and talks to people, which accomplishes about as much thematically as Pariston's negligence. Fucking Garcia adds more to the plot than Hisoka does. What are we doing here? Right. Cards.
3カードよりも4カードの方が強い。一緒にトランプタワー。カードは揃った。
What are you saying?
Leorio clocks in for jobber duty once again, as a quick back alley beatdown gauges the strength of the antagonists in relation to the heroes. He comes back about 40 minutes later to chat with Hisoka and, I think, get decapitated, and then he gets a gay little power friendship moment in Kurapika's conflict, which I'd say is about on par with his role in the Pyro battle. He save Twink, he get bonked, he throw knife. Friendship, effort, victory. Kurapika also doesn't have a goal in this movie, but he is the protagonist whose motivations most closely match Shadow's. So him being forced to both figuratively and literally fight himself is a solid representation of that internal struggle. His whole character arc is a recurring question of, will his vengeance destroy him, or can his friends save him? So conceptually, The Last Mission is smart to make use of that. The film wants to assert that Shadow's grudge sabotages the group's friendship, which Kurapika contrasts by having friends who will keep him grounded. In isolation, that's fine, but when viewed in tandem with the movie's other major theme, that being corruption within the Hunter Association, that seemingly positive ideal takes on some dark implications. Oh look, the media is here. Politics. Wonder where that's gonna go. While their motivations might be the same, Kurapika's grudge was against a specific isolated troop. Shadow's grudge was against a system of power. The Phantom Troop are framed as antagonists. The Hunter Association is primarily represented by a protagonist. The former shows both sides killing and suffering for it. The latter lets war crimes go unpunished. Gon's presence in the film is almost entirely divorced from the main plot. When he asks Gaki why they're doing what they're doing, the response he gets is, "You wouldn't get it." So his only perspective is what he actually sees. Gaki was destroyed by his own covenant, therefore Jed is at fault for enabling and empowering his comrade's grudge. Gon and friends serve as the outsiders to this conflict, but at no point do any of them question Netero's motives. He didn't create the labor camp, he didn't kill innocent people. He's only there for Jed's grudge, and Jed's only there to fight him. So this whole genocide backstory is just a fucking subplot. It's a grudge for Jed to exploit, and the heroes criticize him for that. The issue is that his minions sought him out willingly. They resurrected Jed so they could confront their oppressors. Basically, every relevant character in Hunter x Hunter has some level of personal agency, so why are Gon and friends so dead set on these guys having none? Shuda forcibly injects Kurapika with On during their fight, but it comes out of nowhere over halfway into the film. If that's the narrative you were going for, maybe you should have introduced that idea sooner, cause that's not what happened to these guys. There's also a hint that On slowly drives the user mad, which has implications that aren't super clear. Is that limited to Jed's death to all hunters attitude, or does it also apply to exposing a corrupt organization?
Those who are swallowed up by On are truly pitiful.
You created the conditions that brought them here in the first place. What crime could be more heinous than the extermination and internment of their people? Whatever. I guess they're just pitiful for, being born in a society. See, personal agency could have been a strong theme in this movie, and the antagonists could have been some twisted opposition against that, like a Naruto antagonist that serves as both parallel and contrast. Here's what happens when you go down the wrong path, so don't do that. They almost do that with Kurapika and Shuda, but it falls flat because Shuda does have personal agency. Sure, vengeance is bad and all, but the members of Shadow each shared the same goal. What's the connection there? They were bad friends because they collectively chose revenge? I guess you can't be friends with someone if you're dead, so... Suffice to say, Gon's lecture about the power of friendship did not land for me. Much like the blimps in the movie, it exploded. Jed killed those people, by the way. The other guys turn a few fighters into zombies, but they don't kill any of the hostages. Kurapika's friends dissuade him from vengeance because they don't want him to kill. So that doesn't matter though, because Jed's grudge supersedes theirs. A petty rivalry matters more to the narrative than the political corruption surrounding it. Don't be consumed by hatred and revenge, but also don't challenge the corrupt systems that harmed you, because that's just inconvenient for everybody. Netero claims that Jed's death represents the disappearance of the darkness, while the dark secrets of the Hunter Association remain buried, the black record locked in a vault never to be spoken of again. Truly, they were two sides of the same coin. One was a good character, and the other was a bad character. Hiyori Itai.
The darkness has been lifted.
This movie has become a fucking comedy to me at this point. Rule of 3, Joker 2019, go to therapy. Bisky has to tell them not to call her Bisky even though she told them the opposite in canon. Silly Wing didn't tuck his shirt in. That's never come up before. What natural dialogue. Why is Zushi even here? He's not a character in this film, he's an underdeveloped jobber. If you haven't seen the series, you don't know hell the who he is. And if you have seen the series, this is just anti-fan service. See this character you know? Fuck you, he's trash. Welcome to the Hunter Association's office, because that's something we apparently have. Here's the Evangelion room we also apparently have. Here are the two best jokes in the movie back to back. Okay, so the first is when Gon and Killua escape some people chasing them by hiding behind a notably out-of-place cutout board thing. It's a simple joke, and I like it. After that, they find a weapons room behind an auto-locked door, and here, I'll just show you.
ここもオートロックか。うまくいけばこれで開くかも。よし!
It's a simple joke, and I like it. Comedy is dead now. Here's the backstory explained to two characters who will do nothing with the information. Here's the antagonist killing a bunch of nobodies. I'm so enthralled. Go off, King. Half of the dialogue is pure exposition. No one can just fucking talk to each other. More villains beating up background characters. Oh my god, none of these characters are real. This movie needs more actual characters. Okay, well, it needs less characters, actually, but it also needs more characters. Bisky and Wing could have had a fight. Would have made their screen time worthwhile. Why would I care when the actual characters are fighting when so much time is spent on fodder? Everything in this movie is surface-level bullshit. Gon and Killua might as well be fighting a brick wall. Being brooding is not a substitute for having a personality. Do you ever just persuade a corpse? Why are we explaining the properties of Nen when none of it matters to the actual combat? The antagonists have their own evil Nen that the rules of ordinary Nen don't apply to. So when Kurapika goes specialist mode, he just continues fighting with his swords. Hit harder, you win. Yoinking Holy Chain from the main series adds nothing except a reference to Holy Chain. My partner said that was pretty PogChamp though, so this is extra nitpicky, but I really don't like how the characters look. Phantom Rouge had softer, more detailed character designs, but in the last mission, they're much sharper and simplified, which, okay, I know it's for the action. And honestly, the choreography can be pretty sick, but half the time it just looks kinda wonky to me. And I'm a YouTuber, which means I'm an expert on everything I talk about. I'm lying. Please don't take that seriously. But hey, it's finally time for the fight the film has been building to. A bombastic battle between Buddhist behemoths. A spectacle unrivaled in... In fairness, those summons have a lot of minor details that probably made them tough to draw in motion, but I laugh every time I see this. In the Meruem fight that was adapted later, the full Bodhisattva is often never fully shown, and even when it is, the only part that moves is the arm Netero attacks with. It's not a detail I ever actively noticed until now, honestly, but that's just a sign of effective directing and storyboarding, I think. The last mission's fight does use the same abstract imagery and framing, complete with postcard memories, but it doesn't hit as hard for me. The parallels gave me a new appreciation for a scene that I love, though, so that's cool. God, this film really is just we have Chimera Ant at home. I think art is as much about the viewer's vision as it is the creator's, but I sincerely doubt that the writers behind the last mission intended to make a movie about how marginalized people shouldn't fight back against their oppressors. For all the shonen filler movies I've watched over the years, I've always come into them wanting to like them. That's doubly true for Hunter x Hunter, because it's my favorite anime. That said, the last mission has nothing I like about Hunter x Hunter. The fights aren't strategic, the characters aren't compelling, and the plot is nonsensical. It's an F-tier shonen movie. I do not recommend it to fans of the series. I do not recommend it to anyone. If you want to know my actual shonen movie recommendations, I made a tier list on stream years ago. Go judge my impeccable taste and then follow me on Twitch and then support me on Patreon. My hot take is that Leorio and Kurapika should have kissed passionately. Thank you for watching. I hope you're doing okay.